What you are seeing is, I guess you can call it an experiential showing of the Me Too moment for cop killings, at the very least, cop killings of African Americans. This is Wendy's in Atlanta, Chocolate City, going up in flames. Now, you may ask me, Jamarl, why is Wendy's going up in flames? What do you mean, the Me Too moment for cop killings? Glad you asked me that. Rayshard Brooks was killed in Atlanta, Georgia by a police officer. Within 24 hours of that killing, the mayor had basically fired the cop, and the police chief himself has stepped down, or at the very least has also been fired. I'll just read it. Less than 24 hours after a white officer killed an African-American man outside of a fast food restaurant, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta announced on Saturday the city's police chief has resigned. Now, the reason they did this is because they wanted to get ahead of any protests. You've had a situation where a man had his throat kneeled on by another man who believed he was functioning with the authority of the state to do so, with 3 other men watching him commit a murder. That set off protests all across the world. Well, those protests hasn't quelled. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still going on. And seeing as those protests were ignited by a person who was killed by a police officer, this is awkward. And it's so awkward that they tried to get ahead of it in order to prevent chaos. Well, we still got chaos. It seems that we are at a zero tolerance policy in regards to cop killings and retaliation. Now, you may ask me, what does the Wendy's have to do with the cop killings? Again, glad you asked me that also. Apparently, Brooks fell asleep in the drive-thru. Now, as Brooks fell asleep in the drive-thru, somebody called and said, hey, there's somebody who's asleep in the drive-thru. Allegedly, he failed the sobriety test when the officers went to the scene. There was a scuffle. He somehow got his hand on the cop's taser. And according to the police officer, and I'm going to show you, unfortunately, the footage just so you have some kind of point of reference, the cop shoots. I don't like doing these videos. And if you notice, this wasn't necessarily something that I dwelled on, because cops kill 1,000 times a year. And I used to get angry when I would watch those particular videos, so I stopped watching those videos. It's a kind of conscious awareness of you had me at hello and seeing those things. And I've even done my share of publishing like 100 videos one night of cops abusing, beating, injuring, flagrantly violating their authority, taking property. So maybe it's time to dwell on this a bit, especially in the context of now. And put a spotlight on this, since the spotlight is being shown on this one way or the other. Atlanta in flames. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you for allowing me to do it. I'm not going to keep this video entirely long. I'm going to do multiple videos today. Contributor appreciation will be tomorrow. Yeah, this is going to be tomorrow. I'm going to show you a couple of videos. I'm going to show you people who are on the scene discussing it. I'm going to show you the event itself, and I'm going to give a slight commentary after. I really am tired of seeing these happening. I don't care if the person is black or white. Cops kill 1,000 people a year. So yeah, I don't care if they're black or white. There's something weird that we accept that cops, at the very least to African Americans and to minorities, or to people, to the poor, are these kind of wild animals of sorts where you have to deal with a reverence of viciousness, and if you trespass on that reverence of viciousness, then it's understood that they behave however they behave. Why do we accept that? And I got to be honest, especially more so in the case of African Americans, because it doesn't matter what seems to happen. There's a small percentage, or maybe even a larger percentage, of people who would say, "What did he do?" As if what he did somehow justifies what happens. Now, if the officer's life is in danger, fair enough. And I even give a certain degree of leeway, because if that person has to make a snap decision in that way, well, I give a certain degree of leeway and latitude. There's also the reason why I make this argument about poverty, because I want to stop that situation from happening at all, because there are times where in that situation a human is going to behave as a human behaves, where there is no outcome that's going to end up good for either party, because he's going to get charged with a murder and the other guy is going to end up dead. This has to stop. Either in the way we do our policing, whether we even call it policing after we reform it at all. But this has to stop. The first video is of a person who was... The first video, I'll show you the security footage. And then after the security footage, I'll show you the body cam footage. We're adults. Knuckle up. This is the scenes, if I'm not mistaken, from the Wendy's itself. Violent scenes. Be aware. Okay. After they shot him, apparently they picked up the bullet shells before they called for any kind of medical assistance. I will show you the other footage dealing with the body cam. This one is more visceral, so again, family footage included, just be aware.
Put your hands behind your back for me. Here, put your hands behind your back. Hey, stop fighting. Stop fighting. Stop fighting. You're gonna get tased. You're gonna get tased. You're gonna get tased. Stop. Come on, man. Stop. You're gonna get tased. It's the right. Hey, hands off the fucking taser. Stop. Hands off the taser. Stop fighting. Hands off the taser. Stop fighting. You got the fucking taser. Oh. 63.
Come on, man.
Again, all of this is happening within the context of the Floyd murder and the protests still going on. So, here's the rub, and here's the catch, and honest truth. Cops kill 1,000 times a year. This doesn't touch the abusing of authority and all of this other stuff. This just goes right into kill. In the context of those killings, 99%, no charges are filed, at least going from 2013 to 2019. Under normal circumstances, this would be a clean shoot. But we are in a Me Too moment for police killings. And so the mayor, in this case, acted swiftly, fired the police chief, or he resigned. I would imagine there was a certain degree of pressure put on him. And the cop that fired this shot was fired. I want you to hear the people who were on the scene in the way they described this before I say anything else. So listen to a guy at the scene as he discusses what happened. It looks like he's talking to a cop. And I think they're trying to get him to give some kind of testimony. So let's listen.
They're not gonna talk to his supervisor who would ever defend a fucking white cop who just shot a guy for no fucking reason.
I guess you. That was messed up, man.
Fuck, dude. For no reason, bro. All of us saw that shit. He didn't do shit. He didn't do shit.
He
didn't do a fucking thing, dude. I saw the whole fucking thing.
Well,
He didn't do a fucking thing.
Wendy got cameras, they got body cam, everything documented. Everything documented.
They're just gonna make an excuse. They're just gonna make a fucking excuse. That's all they're gonna do is make a fucking excuse.
That's rolling.
So fuck, dude. He
That's
couldn't
rolling.
even handle himself. The
Open
little,
and
the
record.
little piece of shit couldn't even handle himself. But he was putting on his gloves. He was fucking, because he knew he fucked up. He knew he fucked up. And I said that shit. I was like, your career is over. Fucking pig, dude. Sorry, but that's the fuck. In the drive-through Wendy's, white cops killing black people.
All right, you heard his appraisal of what happened. 3 points. And before we get to that, this is a fire starter, apparently. Alleged fire starter. Of course, they're going to say those black folks burned down the Wendy's. It may not have been those quote-unquote black folks. Let's watch.
Look at this white girl. Look at a white girl trying to set shit on fire. Look at a white girl trying to burn down the Wendy's. This wasn't us. This wasn't us.
Now, I don't know if that fire was already going before that quote-unquote white girl got there. I don't even know if that's a white girl. I don't know anything. I'm trying to get this person to come on to the show to talk about it. So, if he does, if you know him, you're more than welcome to tell your side, your story in regards to what's taking place. Not to mention, I kind of want to know the feeling on the ground in regards to the people who are there. So a few points. I'm sick of seeing these videos. I just am. I'm sick of cops extinguishing people's lives, whether it's a clean shoot or not. I'm sick of seeing it. Don't respond that way. Don't respond that way. Like, I know in saying this, I'm still playing into this notion of cops are ferocious animals and you need an air of reverence for the ferocity. But they are ferocious animals. In dealing, especially with people of color. Even if there's no racism, I would even go with this notion of somewhat of an implicit bias, just by definition of the job per se. Whatever you want to call it, please don't respond that way. This is him, perhaps not on his best day. This is him on a better day. He's a person. He has a life. He has a wife, kids. He has a job. He had a family that loved him. I would imagine all of those people who are extinguished, to some degree, do. And yeah, if they're seeing the cop, they're probably not on their best day. However, that interaction took place. He was clearly, well, I can't say clearly, but if you're falling asleep in the Wendy's parking lot, you're probably drunk. Please don't respond that way. Like, I am stressing that. You may feel aggrieved, you may feel bugged. I get it. And I'm not asking you to not respond that way because you're wrong. I'm asking you to not respond that way because I want to see you go home. That's an unnecessary response. Even if he's taking you to jail, I get it. That response is going to trigger another response. There is no cop in the world that would have not responded in going after him. Just being honest. And ending up in a scuffle in that way. There's no cop. Now, the catch becomes, what was the conversation beforehand that led up to that? Because you started off with a man who was asleep, and then you ended up with a man who's running. Apparently, there was an hour and a half of conversation. 20 minutes of it or so was left or something. Apparently, they were having the conversation before where everything was calm. a significant length of time apparently where everything was calm. And so I don't entirely know what produced that specific action. That's not a good act. Even if you don't want to go to jail, I get it. I would prefer you to go home after going to jail, if indeed you're going to jail. That's not a good reaction. They always say, what do parents tell their kids in dealing with cops? Especially black parents. Be respectful. But, they would say that of anybody. My mom, however, gets pretty edgy when I am engaging cops because for her, it's not the respectful thing. When people say respectful, they're saying something else. They're saying the reference stuff. I'm respectful, but I kind of look at him as a person. And I, to some degree, expect him to look at me in the same. And to look at me in the sense of, this is a human being that I'm dealing with. It's not a cartoonish figure, even though I don't necessarily know him. I need to assume that to some degree he's similar to me and have family and feelings and everything else. Even if he's bugging me because he's saying something back to me that I don't particularly like. That's a bad act. Him running is not a great thing. Him reaching for his taser is horrific. All of those things would have produced the exact reaction that that cop did, at the very least, in the first few split seconds. Be honest. He behaved badly, to put it mildly. Again, I say that because it's a scuffle. On the second point, does every action have to be escalated? And I mean this from the standpoint of the cop. Does every action have to be escalated? And beyond being escalated, does every reaction, especially that's found to be aggressive, have to result in maximum justice? He took your stun gun. You said it was a stun gun. You had a real gun. He's running away. Do you have to shoot him in the back? Do you have to do that? Is that your training? Have you been trained in the way where it's any threat perceived solicits maximum justice? In which case, I can end his life. Whatever humanity that person had, I can rip that off this physical plane of existence and it be somewhat of a clean shoot. Despite the fact that nothing he was going to do was going to be able to kill me. It's an equitable distribution of force. It is impossible for him to kill you with the stun gun. It is very possible and very likely you will do so with your gun. Now, I get it. You're being asked to make this choice in a minute, less than a minute, a few seconds. It's not an easy choice. And that's just kind of why I go through this thing of, is this your training where all of this stuff is immediately escalated to the nth degree, where every reaction requires jail, beat, shoot. That's all I can do. That's all I got. That's all we got. That's all we got. Why? Why? We pay your tax dollars. And I understand some people say, well, look, he shouldn't have gotten to the scuffle. I agree with you. He shouldn't have gotten to the scuffle. By the same token, should the officer, are there any other rational actions than shoot and kill? And beyond that point, we have 5% of the world's population with 25% of the population in our jail. Does that necessitate jail? Does it? Can you, sir, I'm going to give you a ticket and I'm going to drive you home. Is that part of the process? He does pay your tax dollars. He is not the best version of himself right now. Fair enough. But he does pay your tax dollars. Are there any other options than jail, beat, shoot? This is what we get at, man. When people are making this argument about defunding the police, in part, it's not so much that they're saying they want to abolish the police. They are saying they want to abolish things like this. They don't like this interaction. They don't want that guy, maybe, to have a gun when he goes and just say, hey, we need you to move your car. And you're, inebriated, so we need to do something about the fact you're inebriated, but maybe not jail. Maybe not jail. Maybe I'm going to take you home. Maybe I'm going to give you a ticket. Maybe, hey, we're going to move your car out the way and, you got to do something about that. Whatever! Doesn't have to be jail. And immediately after the shit takes off, doesn't have to be killed. This is why people bitch about this. I understand that you can make a case that says, well, look, the officer was in kill mode. But should he be in kill mode? in that moment when his life is not in danger? I gotta be honest, I don't think so. I don't think a cop should be trained in that way. I get the interaction is tense. I get it's a horrible fucking situation. But I also get that that's a human being that had a family that loved him, that wanted to go home every bit as much as that cop wanted to go home. And despite the fact that he is not the best version of himself, that cop, it's his job to deal with taxpayers who are not the best version of themselves. It's not an excuse. I could make the argument, I would even make the argument that even if 70% of human beings would have responded the same way, that's still not an excuse. You still took that man's life in a situation where he posed no threat to you. I mean, for fuck's sake, you had his car. Even if he ran away, you had his car. You could track him down. I'm just sick of seeing it, that's all. And for the last point, society. You train that guy to be that way. Let's be honest. The society accepts cops being that way. They've accepted cops being that way for years. African Americans have been saying cops have acted like cops. And white society was like, no, I don't know what those Negroes are talking about. And then they see it and they're like, whoa, did you see that? You would see something like Rodney King and it shocks the shit out of the nation. Do you realize white America has jumped 20 points in looking at this saying, yeah, there's a racial problem with this. It's not just a racial problem, it's a societal problem in the way that we accept cops being cops. We accept it, unfortunately. And what I mean by accept it, the mad animal thing is acceptance. That's acceptance. That's tacit acceptance. We allow cops to be trained in a way, for him to behave that way. It would have taken some level of agency that went beyond and even pushing back, I would argue, on his training for him to not kill him. And if I'm right in that, do you think that's a problem? Now, I get some people, again, are going to look at that video and say, well, the cop was, got in a scuffle, so it's fair game. But at what point does it become fair game? Doesn't it become fair game? Like, I don't understand the justification that people get where they say, yeah, maximum justice is okay because he was selling loose cigarettes. It's like, what? How? How is that okay? Maximum justice is okay because, I don't know, he was doing something about checks. Some people even go so far as like, oh, the guy was a criminal. As if the fact that he was a criminal somehow denigrates the fact that he's a human being and makes his life or less worthy of life. I'm sorry, it doesn't. We need to have a different way of looking at policing. I get the public is uncomfortable with that because the majority of the public, I don't think, see cops in this kind of way. I think they've started to just because of everything that's been taking place with all of the attention from the Floyd killing. But if I'm right, and everything he learned through training tells him to do that, and that if 70% of people, they say people are what they do. I think people are what they do within the context of their experiences. I mean, it's like a fish in water. You can't pretend the water is not there. If he was trained, if 70% of people who went through cop training were responding that way, are you comfortable with that? Do you think this situation could have been handled differently where it didn't escalate in this way? Meaning, is it okay for cops to do things other than jail, bash, kill? I think that's a fair point. I think I'm being fair, in fact, to the officer. Because my thing is, that officer needs to be held accountable regardless of the fact that I think most people who are trained would have did the exact same thing. And I find that horrible. Because that gets into cop culture and that gets into the way we train them where everything is a threat. And so the moment that something happens, like, you need to go home at night. And in the words of one cop, I would rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Because what they know is judged by 12, 99%, at the very least, there's no charges. It's fucking horrendous. I don't like the situations that we end up in society. That's all. Yeah. I'll leave it here. It's like they're no-win situations sometimes. Like you have a society, and that society forces a certain degree of complicity among everyone in the society, especially in regards to labor, work, the amount of time that a person has to contribute to work, those type of things. So there's never, and most of the people have fewer resources. And so you have this situation where we allow a certain underclass in our society, and we're shocked as shit when situations happen with a shared society that we consider underclass. It's like we throw in cops into a mix that's... let me say it this way. I don't have to look at any specific case of war crimes if we send soldiers abroad. Just by virtue of those soldiers being abroad, they will commit war crimes. I know a certain percentage of it will, just from a probabilistic standpoint. You can have the best military on the planet. Doesn't matter. There's going to be some situation that is going to piss somebody off, that somebody's going to kill one of their friends, and they're going to make a massacre. That's why I make the argument, don't send them over there in the first place. This is kind of how I feel about the cops. If I know statistically that those cops are going to be in certain neighborhoods, and those cops, a percentage is going to have certain biases, even if they don't have certain biases. People talk about Chauvin being racist. Chauvin could have been black, and Chauvin would have did the exact same thing, which is kind of the point that I'm getting at. It's just the culture, man. Like, share, and subscribe. Would you say the world is scary, Paul? Yeah, the world is scary. We can have it, but it's not determinative, if that makes sense. Like, for whatever reason, look, to me, I look at stuff and say, okay, what's the problem, and what's the rational way through it in order to get what you want? In politics, you're never allowed to do that. Partially, you're never allowed to do that because you have all sorts of people who are pulling on you. All of these people want all of these things. And so the first question becomes, where's your bias? Which side are you going to lean? Are you going to lean towards the public? Are you going to lean towards some kind of corporation? Are you going to lean towards some kind of, what's your policy? What's your preference? For the most part, both sides agree on economics. They agree on foreign policy. And so the choices you think you get in society really boils down to Pepsi, Coke, I get this insurance policy or that house or whatever, but not real world things that really affect things, because for the most part, both parties are captured by corporate interests, by financial interests. Until that is broken, then there's an inability to get anything that you want that will be representative of public will through your political space. The question becomes, how do you break that? And part and parcel of breaking that, stop pretending that the system is representative of the public. It has lost credibility. It should be treated as such. And other political institutions need to be created in order to deal with it. Like, share, and subscribe.